This episode is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com, the #1 seller of games and gaming accessories. And GatheringMagic.com, the #1 resource for Magic the Gathering news and articles.
Hi, I'm Josh, Squash86 on Twitter, and this is my Nicol Bolas deck. So this deck mostly got its start from me trying to antagonize one of the other guys in our playgroup. I decided that I wanted to build a deck that would Cruel Ultimatum him as often as possible. Since then, I've managed to do it 21 times. He is much less amused at this than I am. In this color combination, there's only a handful of generals to go with, so I went with Nicol Bolas for the flying and the 7 power. The deck's very heavy on sorceries and instants and ways to recur them, so we're going to start with some of the more aggressive sorceries, Cruel Ultimatum being the first one, the card drawing, the discard, the life gain, the life loss. It's delightful. Temporal Manipulation. I had Time Warp in the deck at one point, then it got Wild Ricocheted, and then I didn't use Time Warp. Bribery, because everyone else's stuff is cooler than mine. Army of the Damned ends up being a very good finisher and can also hold off a horde of attackers if it lasts for a turn. I've been very pleased with it. Reanimate, so cost effective, lets me either recur one of the creatures that bring back a sorcery or an instant for me, or pluck something delightful out of another person's graveyard. Cackling Counterpart is a commander cast special. I had Rite of Replication in this deck, and I've been much happier with this. Being able to recur, again, one of the creatures that bring back sorceries or Snapcaster Mage. Being able to copy a Rune-Scarred Demon has been very helpful. Leyline of Anticipation, overall just a solid card. As I said before, this is very much a control deck, and being able to do things on an opponent's turn is key. So now we're getting into some of the recursion. First off is Relearn, very basic, just bring a sorcery or an instant back to your hand. Call to Mind does the same thing. Mystic Retrieval does the same thing, and you can flash it back. This is the most recent addition to the deck since Dark Ascensions came out, and it's quickly my favorite recursion spell. Mnemonic Wall, it's a wall, and it brings back an instant or sorcery. It's very handy to recur with Cackling Counterpart or Sheoldred, Reanimate, or Cruel Ultimatum. Izzet Chronarch? Take a look at that mustache. Charmbreaker Devils has been an all-out all-star for me. It can get really huge really quick. I've had it as high as 20 power before, and it's a renewable source of card advantage as it brings back so many of the sorceries and instants that are in this deck. Snapcaster Mage, because sometimes you have to do it right now. And Yawgmoth Will. Ends up not being quite as busted in EDH as it does in Vintage, but it's still pretty good, especially when you can bring back another land, maybe a sorcery or an artifact or a creature in addition to 3 or 4 sorceries. It can be a pretty big effect. I run a lot of counter magic in this deck. Both to defend against threats that I can't deal with in these colors, as well as to punch through some of the sorceries and the recursion. Force of Will. Misdirection is never a dead card. Mana Drain can help fuel some of these big expensive sorceries. Plain old Counterspell, so cost effective, and it's a nice hard counter. Trickbind stops all kinds of shenanigans, especially Storm. Hinder helps deal with all kinds of generals. Same thing with Spell Crumple. Cryptic Command is just so flexible, can't miss it. Dismiss. If I had to make a cut right now, this would probably be it. But in the meantime, it's a hard counter and it draws a card. Solid, but not game breaking. Desertion, again, to kind of 2-for-1 an opponent when they're trying to bring down their big guys. I'll take it. Another nice thing is that it's also a hard counter. They don't have to be casting a creature and artifact. So moving on to some of the tutoring and searching. Demonic Tutor, Vampiric Tutor, and Mystical Tutor need very little explanation. Intuition, since there is so much stuff that interacts with the graveyard, I found this very convenient. You can get 3 counterspells with it. You can get a big creature, a Reanimate, and a Snapcaster Mage, or you can get 2 or 3 card drawing spells, or a big sorcery in 2 ways to recur it. Here's another spot where Mystic Retrieval really shines. Mystical Teaching, there's a lot of instants in the deck in addition to the counterspell, so it's nice to fetch them at instant speed. Rune-Scarred Demon, he's big, he flies, and he brings up, tutors up a card. Especially good with Cackling Counterpart. Or Reanimate. Moving on to some of the card drawing and card filtering. Brainstorm, just a basic effect. Sensei's Divining Top. Impulse, I've been a big fan of that ever since it's been printed. And more recently, Forbidden Alchemy. There's so much draw and so much tutoring in the deck that I found it very convenient to have the dig effects in there just to get to something, especially if I'm looking for a particular answer. Chase the Mind Sculptor, better than all. Fact or Fiction, because I love watching my opponents make mistakes. Deep Analysis in the deck, you can power it off a lot of the artifact ramp, as well as it fits good in an intuition pile. Consecrated Sphinx, because silly 6-drops are just too good to ignore. Moving on to some of the board control, I like Slaughter Pact as it's fetchable with Mystic Retrieval as well as Teleria West. Terminate, absolute solid removal. Rapid Decay is one of the more obscure cards. I like it because it's an instant and it does remove a lot more than cards like Cremate or Coffin Purge. It also cycles in the rare instance that you don't need to do anything in the graveyard. So this ends up a lot of times being counter-target reanimation spell. Still really good though. Capsize. This color combination has a lot of trouble dealing with enchantments and some other permanents. This is kind of a catch-all to deal with those weaknesses. It doesn't hurt that it's got the buyback as well. Rebuild. I'm a big fan of this card, especially when you go up against opponents that play Arkham and drop a ton of artifacts. To be able to go on at the end of their turn, rebuild, and force them to discard half of their board, it's a pretty delightful feeling. Curse's Charm, very cheap and very flexible. Returning a target permanent to its owner's hand, destroying a creature, or destroying an artifact. A lot of bang for your buck here. Damnation, your basic sweeper. The Abyss, since the deck runs very few creatures, this tends to be very one-sided. Sheoldred's along the same lines, has the added benefit of bringing back some of the creatures that I have, so like the Solemn Simulacrum, or the Mnemonic Wall, or the Izzet Chronarch, and it's also a nice hefty beater. All his dust is in the deck along the same lines as Capsize. When you're playing against decks that, especially like the green-white enchantment decks, it's good to be able to deal with everything they've got. Again, pick something like this over maybe Nevinyrral's Disc, just to fit in with the rest of the recursion. Decree of Pain, a few weeks ago I actually drew 16 cards off this. It's pretty good. Black Sun Zenith deals with a lot of pro-black creatures and is just another sleeper in the deck. Comet Storm, more creature removal, as well as planeswalker removal and player removal. And then finally, we've got some mana acceleration. The deck is very top-heavy, so I do run a lot of artifact mana. So we have Mana Crypt, we have the Soul Ring, we have the Mana Vault, we have a Nightscape Familiar, which is probably the best acceleration in the deck because it continues to add value. Izzet Signet is basic as well as Dimir Signet. Grim Monolith, the Solemn Simulacrum, Therian Dynamo. Some players like Worn Power Stone over this. I like it to come into play untapped. And then finally, Gilded Lotus. The deck is also very color intensive, so I like having the ability to pick which colors that I'm tapping for. So finally we have the lands. There are 36 lands, which in addition to the 10 mana acceleration, artifacts, and spells that we saw, make the deck's mana base really rock solid. We've got lands that tap for one color, some islands. A Teleria West helps with color fixing and finding some of the other utility lands, as well as the Slaughter Pact that's in the deck. We've got Swamps. A Bojuka Bog helps with Graveyard Hate. We've got 2 color lands, so we've got some Revised Duels, some Shock lands, the M10 and Innistrad Duels, and 2 of the Ravnica Bounce lands. Next we have the 3 color lands, the City of Brass, a Crumbling Necropolis, a Reflecting Pool, and a Command Tower. Fetch lands help smooth things out. There's also a Scalding Tarn in there. Temple of False God, and some of the utility we talked about, Wasteland to get rid of other non-basics. Boseiju, which punches through those sorceries. And finally, a Maze of Ith. Thanks for watching CMDR decks, everybody. Please remember to subscribe and favorite.